Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Factional Fight Update from the car. My name is Adam, and as you can see, I'm driving home as I do every day, and I thought I'd turn on the video and just bounce some ideas off that have been going around in my head all week. So last weekend, we were able to get a show on, although it was just me on my own. I got a chance to show off the Titch Memorial, which was just, I just found out just the week before that we were right next to it. Willow had given me a tour of the place and showed me where I could find some sandstone, because that's another thing that I needed. So I feel like that was a pretty successful episode. Got what I wanted to do done, and although I still need to figure out a memorial item that I'd like to leave at the memorial, and I'll have to talk to Brian about that. Maybe we can take a little trip over there and I'll show him, because he hasn't seen the place yet, and we'll see what his impressions are. A lot of stuff has been happening this week. So this week was we saw an update, like a Valorant International. Was that this week? I think that was this week. No, it was last week. So we didn't, today is Wednesday, that's right. So today we haven't seen anything, but nonetheless, I wanted to sort of like talk about something that I saw happen over the last week, and that was when we got the news last week. It was mentioned that Budo is going to be releasing a dev blog regarding the way that they're going to be moving forward in terms of development of the game. I mentioned it on the show a little bit, but I was, I thought about it a little bit more. Not to mention sort of the reaction of the player base to this dev blog. It was really concerning, actually, to me to see the negativity that came out of the player base in response to the dev blog, because I really think that the Worm team is doing the best that they can with what they got. I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but there are not that many people who are official hired devs that are working on the game. I almost feel like in terms of coding, there might only be one or two at most who are getting paid by the company. All the rest seem to be volunteer devs. Now, they might get compensated here and there, but they're not like official members of the team in terms of like hired employees of Code Club, full-time or anything like that. Like, for example, we see Keenan talking a lot on the forums about, all of his projects related to Worm, but Worm is not his main job. Like, that's not his full-time job. He has his own full-time job, and he does Worm in his spare time. And when you have a team that's built up of mostly, or not mostly, but a lot of volunteer hours, really you can only get done what can get done. Because if, let's say, one of these volunteers, their real life gets busy, then it's very common to see projects sort of like slow down in the development, or it's very unpredictable, right? So with that in mind, you can see how if the dev team were to say stuff like, for example, our next big project is to work on revamping the entire UI, which they did say that I want to say like 2 years ago that they said that. They had this big announcement, and we were so excited, like, UI, can't wait to see anything. But, since that announcement, we haven't really seen anything. I know part of the UI work was, partly the, what they called the UIX, which is the user interface experience, which is how the player interacts with the interface. Particularly, we saw big improvements in terms of placing items, lots of keybind improvements, and all sorts of stuff in terms of like the way the player interacts with the environment and the way the player interacts with the game. But we see nothing in relation to any updates on what the progress is on the actual user interface. it has been mentioned that they're working on a contextual keybind, which again is another one of those things that are just can't wait for it, but at the same time you have to understand that there's only so many people working on the game, and then when certain events arise, like bugs come up, or like for example Independence had that issue where it was crashing all the time, like that just sucks all the time away from the actual development of the game. So on the one hand, I really do feel like the dev team has kind of communicated to us what they want to be working on, but at the same time it is definitely unforeseen circumstances that have prevented these things from sort of like continuing to be worked on and released in a timely manner. Now, this has obviously caused a lot of grief, and a lot of like players have expressed that grief in terms of feeling as though the dev team is not communicating effectively their plans. Like we've heard Buddha say often, we have loads of stuff in the works. We have like the next, what we're working on immediately. We have what's on the sort of midterm plans, and we also have long-term plans, right? Like we have like these plans, which makes it sound really good, and I really like hearing that. It doesn't sound like the dev team are planning on letting us know what those plans are, and I think the reason is because they don't want us to take, let's say, an item on that list and say, why haven't you worked on this item? Because it was on your plan like so long ago, like in the same way that I'm doing with the user interface. Like, user interface was announced so long ago, why isn't there anything being done about it? And I understand that position because, you know, okay, let me back up a little bit. The response by the player base to this dev blog, which was mostly negative, I think is not beneficial in any way to, you know, moving forward from here. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. My feeling was that what the player base is doing by responding negatively to these dev blogs is essentially telling the devs not to write those dev blogs anymore, or not to release that much information anymore, because, like, put yourself in the shoes of them. You spend this time to try to formulate a new plan of how to move forward from here, and you think, okay, this, based on what I know, this is the best way that I can do it. And you release that information to the wider public, and all you get is negativity back. Not even like constructive negativity, it's like just negativity. Then I can see how that would be extremely demotivating. And I really hope the devs have thick enough skin to just shrug it off and keep going with the plan and being passionate about the game as much as they want. But I can't imagine that it doesn't affect them, you know? I really feel as though we as the player base have to be more supportive of the dev team and have to acknowledge that it's not an ideal situation. We don't have like a AAA support, a AAA sort of game budget here. We have people who are willing to put in the time. We have, you know, the passion is there from these people and these individuals, and then on top of that we have real life that gets in the way of these things, and you know, it ultimately means that changes to the game are going to be slow. But the one thing I really would hate to see is the development on this game stop. And we have experience with other games that has happened, and it's such a like, it's so easy to get into that spot where the dev team just folds, right? We've seen resiliency in this dev team so far, and I appreciate that. We've also seen, you know, there's a core group of people up there who are consistent and who are passionate and who have been there for a long time, But, sometimes it doesn't take very much for a dev team to fall apart or to just say this is enough. And, one of these days that straw could easily be the player base's reaction to a particular project, right? I am severely impressed by how the dev team took the phishing update response, seeing as the sort of nature of that particular update. I was really severely worried that the response by the player base about the phishing system was going to be the thing that broke it, that broke the morale, that broke the momentum. I'm sure it broke the momentum somewhat, that it had some effect on what happened next, and it hurts me to it pains me just to think about that this game could be better if the player base was a little bit more supportive, actually a lot more supportive of the devs. The way I look at it is it's very similar to a performance, right? You have a person who's up on stage and they're performing, and their performance is affected by the audience's reaction. Okay, for any of you out there who have that experience of performing, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you, as the performer, sense some kind of disgust from the audience or some kind of negativity coming from the audience, that completely negatively impacts your performance. And I kind of feel like it's the same kind of thing with the dev team. They put their heart and soul into this game, and then when they release something that they put in all this work on, and the reaction is negative, that just blows the wind out of the sails, right? And it could easily cause the next update to be not nearly as good because they don't have the moral support of the player base. And then that can easily deteriorate to something that goes really bad. And I'm really fearful of that in a game like Worm, because, such a small team made up of mostly lots of volunteers and lots of, very few members that are official. And what would happen if those volunteers just said, you know what, that's enough. Like, I am not getting paid nearly enough to deal with the pressure that this player base is putting on them. So that's my feeling. I don't know what else to say about that. In terms of the actual plan moving forward from here, I am 100% full in favor of this new plan. I really think that with the team that they have, trying to keep up with these bi-weekly updates, I thought that was ludicrous to begin with, although it sort of was working for a while there. I have to put on the front windshield heater. That might cut into the sound, but that's okay. So yeah, it was ridiculous that they were releasing stuff every 2 weeks, but it was clear that at least in the more recent times, those bi-weekly updates were becoming thinner and thinner, especially during the time when they're trying to deal with the independence issues and whatever other issues and bug fixes and this, that, or the other thing. It does definitely feel like there's times where there's not really much going on. I've been feeling like recently, and it might just be because it was after the update during the winter update, but shortly after, maybe the month or two after the winter update that came with the phishing, and once all that was bug fixed out, it just felt like there was nothing really coming into the game. Now, the saving grace is all the normal mapping and all the visual graphical updates that they've been doing to the game. That's been sort of flooding in at this point. But again, I really feel like larger updates, and I've mentioned this before, larger updates I think would be more beneficial to the game as a whole. If let's say every 4 to 6 months they came out with a major, they saved up all the little things that they do, imagine all the normal mapping, all the specular mapping, let's say all that was saved up, None of it was in the game. And then all of a sudden, boom, everything has normal mapping and specular mapping. Like everything. Completed. Nothing was missed. Like, that would be impressive if that happened. Like, that would be like a huge, huge update. Getting it like piecemeal, sure, like the end result is the same, but the impact is not, you know? The impact is not nearly the same. So I feel like saving up those big things for completed, you know, major updates is going to have a much bigger impact. It will, you know, if you incorporate new things into the game, then it might motivate people to come back much more if there's a lot more in the update. Like, for example, the last little bit, like the last major update with the fishing, and what else was reworked during that? Like, to me, I can't even remember the major things during that update. Like, there was the PvP stuff, which didn't really affect me, and then there was the priest rework, which, I mean, for all it was, it really felt like a PvP update, to be honest, and I'm not even sure how that affected the PvP really all that much. Oh my god, that's a whole other topic to talk about, is the PvP versus PvE. Where should they focus their time? But I'll be honest, like my real like gut feeling, and I don't know, maybe I don't know everything, but my feeling is that, and I'm not saying this because I'm a PvEer or a Freedomer or a Care Bear or whatever, but I really think that that's the direction that the game should go, is towards the PvE side of things. I know all these PvP players are so like, they're wishing for the game to come back to its glory days, but I'm not sure if you guys remember exactly what the glory days were like, but from what I understand, nobody wants the glory days back, because all it meant was there was one kingdom just ruling the whole place, and that was it. Like, that's not fun unless you're on the winning side. I don't know. Anyway, look, back to the update cycle. Like, what's great is that it's going to give the dev team a lot more time to work on fixing the bugs that come with each update. Right, so like a update's going to release, and then the next major update, or at least I guess minor update. Like, it sounds like monthly minor updates with every so often having a major update, right? So you come out with an update at the end of the month, and then you have like a few weeks or a couple weeks or whatever to work out the bugs or to whatever it is. And it seems like these monthly ones are going to be sort of minor things. Minor additions, things that sort of come up that make sense to put in now. My hope is that some of the things that get completed get put on hold to be incorporated into a major update. Not everything, but I almost feel like most things should be held on to as they get completed, and make sure that those things sort of, I don't even know, I almost feel like the update should be coordinated in some way, so that each update sort of works together with the next update, you know, like, or like each thing that's being worked on sort of like works together. Like, for example, let's suppose that the next thing that the devs decide to work on is the animal system, which, by the way, that's my choice. If you were to work on anything, it would be the animal system. And then somebody decides, okay, I'm gonna make new colors for all the different types of animals now. There's gonna be different colors for dogs, and there's gonna be different colors for hellhounds and whatever, like everything. They just go through the whole thing, okay? So what would happen if it worked the way it normally did up until this point would be that, okay, the dogs and the hellhounds got new updates in terms of what their visual looks like, so let's put those in this week. And then next week, the unicorns get an update, so let's put that in there. And then it's like comes in slowly but surely, one bit at a time. And then, oh yeah, somebody's working on the taming system, and they did some switches to the tamings, like the whole taming got revamped, so then when that gets done, that gets put into the game. Oh, and then here's a few more animals that get put in after that, and then, oh, let's change the trait, the whole trait system gets changed, like, it's like piecemeal, like a little bit here, a little bit there. Of course, at the end of the day, the whole thing feels like it was all revamped, but it was like done kind of like a bit at a time. What I feel like they should do now is, instead of that, if, let's say, some of the animals get new skins or colors or whatever, hold on to those. Just don't release those into the game. Just hold on to those and like say, okay, well, 4 months from now we'll have a major update. Let's hold on to these new models, and you just keep adding to them until that 4-month mark. And oh, you over there, you're not doing anything. Maybe you might want to work on some piece to the animal system, like taming's on the docket, and you know, we want to work on the trait system, and we want to work on, you know, the breeding, whatever it is. Okay, and then get everybody working on each piece of this thing. Every time that something gets done, just save it, put it together, get it on the test build, get that half-baked version of it on the test. Let people go onto the test, play around with the half-baked version, give feedback, go back and revamp some things, you know, like, and keep adding things, and maybe when it's half-baked and people are messing around with it on the test server, you come up with ideas on what major thing can sort of like accompany the ideas that you've gotten so far, you know, and make this like a 4-month, 6-month cycle of playing around with a test build for a while, you know, while the system is all half-baked, it should be played around with, not put onto live. You know what I mean? And then once you flesh out everything, and you know, bugs are fixed on the test server, and it's been tested long enough, and the system feels full, release it. And you know, there's going to need to be a balance, because you know, you often will need that pressure of a release date in order to get stuff done. But you know, don't commit. You know, I'm not sure how many times I feel like the dev team has committed to a release date that was far too soon. Don't commit so early to a release date. Get to a point where you're feeling like good about the update. Set a release date that is a decent amount of time between that moment that you're like, okay, things feel good on the test server, the systems are working together. We're going to release this in a month from now, a month and a half from now. I don't know. Give yourself like time, because. And I feel like a little bit more time than you might think is better than not, because I don't know, the releases always felt like, I don't know, like a little bit rocky, I guess. You know, they would release something, inevitably bugs, those bugs would get fixed, but then the player base would cry out all their negativity, and why did you implement this thing this way, and whatever it is, right? Like, I feel as though if you give it time on the test server, then that information is going to get out. It's going to give time for the player base to get that information of what is coming, to get acclimated to that idea before it gets added to the game. I don't know. That's my feeling. I like the direction that this is going. I like to hear that we've got plans for the future coming from the devs. I would love to hear what those plans are. I am the type of person who just, I can't wait to hear the long-term plans. And I really wish, I really hope, I hope against all hope, that the dev team, despite their feeling about releasing what their plans are, I hope that they'll be willing to just lay it all out there. And take the consequence of some people being complainers, because as they've seen, people will complain no matter which way you do it. No matter how you decide to go forward from here, people will complain. So take the path that makes the non-complainers the most happy. That's how I look at it. And I really feel as though if you told us that you're working on something and it doesn't come quite as quickly as we want it to, that's okay. You know, I've been holding on to my breath for the UI, and I'll continue holding on, because I know that with commitment, with motivation, with passion, it will eventually get done. Like, I have full confidence that this dev team can get stuff done because they've proven time and time again that they can. Yeah, so long-term plans, please. I hope with these dev these dev streams that we'll get more insight into these sorts of things. You know, and I want to like really encourage the devs to just be loose with the information, you know, and be honest. Like, UI is on the docket. I'm going to work on UI, but it's not coming for a long time. But I want to hear ideas. Like, what are you thinking about the UI? And you know, you have ideas, and maybe like you're not set on those ideas. That's fine. I still am so interested in that process of the morphing of those ideas over time. Like, hearing what your thoughts are now, and then knowing, like, hearing them again next time, it might be like, oh, you refined this idea to be something completely different now, and this seems better. And having that discussion, I think, is really important. One thing that I've learned about streaming is that the actual discussion forms ideas more concretely. Right? Just laying it out there and going in without really much of an idea of exactly what it's going to be, just discussing it formulates that idea more concretely. And I hope that the devs use the dev streams to that effect. You know, like, get a couple devs on there shooting ideas back and forth between each other in an effort to develop the ideas and develop the language around those ideas to flesh them out in front of the audience, and having the audience input. And I feel as though transparency will go a long way to revitalizing this game for a lot of people. That's my belief. And, you know, I'll just hope to see to see these dev streams and hope to see them, you know, talking about long-term plans. I want to see a roadmap. That's what I want to see, a roadmap. Even if that roadmap is like a rough draft, I want to see it. And I think that those sorts of things really keep my interest on the game, you know? Anyway, that's enough rambling for me. The plan is to stream again on Friday. Friday. I really hope for Friday. I keep saying Friday, and then it never ends up being Friday. I don't know. But that's my hope. I hope for Friday, and we'll see what happens. I'll try to drag Brian in on there. He's been taking a little bit of a break recently, but he'll be back soon, I'm sure. He has lots of plans. I have lots of plans. Can't wait to play Worm Online. So until next time, I hope to see you guys at the next stream. Keep on worming. And yeah, that's it for me. Have a good one, guys.